I am here with Steven, PWF Empire's very own Steven, the creator of the Kayfabe Tier List, which is a visual tracker used to record the mobility of the members of WWE's roster in terms of credibility and presentation. And with this edition of the Kayfabe Tier List, the post SummerSlam edition, we've had some pretty big moves here. As you can see, we have vacant with the WWE Universal Championship. He's up in S tier now. His return to the list. That's very important. And the title is no longer on Finn Balor. He had to relinquish the title due to injuries. I think this is the biggest thing with the list. The three members of the Shield were all demoted to the A tier. This is a pretty big move. And a move that I know that you've been talking about for weeks, because there was something that you said was wrong with the Kayfabe tier list. So could you give us a bit of insight as to why all three former members of the Shield got demoted and pushed down to the A tier?
Yeah, there was something not quite right about the A plus tier, the past few lists. Just seeing Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns up there with the other guys, something felt wrong. And it wasn't necessarily one thing that I could pinpoint because I could say, okay, look, Roman beat Triple H. Roman probably had a chance against Cena. And I could say Seth Rollins beat Roman Reigns. Dean Ambrose beat Seth Rollins. Dean Ambrose beat these two guys. But overall, I just didn't feel like they were all on the same level. So I had to do some major overhaul. And I don't think of this more of a demotion as it is just a recalibration of
Okay.
things.
Mm-hmm.
Although it could be seen as a demotion. I mean, none of them did anything wrong that would warrant this, but I just felt this was a more accurate reflection of how things truly are. And that's sort of why I did it, because we know that the Shield could beat each other, but when it comes to being on the same level as guys like John Cena, Triple H, and The Undertaker, well, who I consider the staples of the A plus tier, especially Cena and Triple H. I consider those two. I don't see them ever dropping. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
Undertaker could conceivably go back to S. I don't know what he would do.
It's kind of interesting for me to look at this and the Shield being in the A tier and being moved in a recalibration from the A plus tier. And I guess I'm kind of wondering, why were they there to begin with? Because I'm thinking, like, if WWE was to do their own kayfabe tier list, the Shield would be in the A plus tier, right? Like, it seems as if that's the way in which they're presented. That's what they want fans to believe about the Shield. But it's kind of interesting that it doesn't apply, at least as far as you're concerned.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Roman Reigns, I could see him in the A plus tier if it were not for the recent string of losses and
Mm-hmm.
the demotion to the U.S. title picture. Now, it could be that he wins the Universal title next week, and then I move him back up to A plus. I just need to feel like they're actually behind him again in order to justify that. Roman Reigns isn't really the problem.
I can tell you who the
Seth,
problem is.
the problem is Dean Ambrose. We both know
Yes.
that.
I've been
Um,
trying to tell you
well,
for the
no,
longest time.
I've always agreed with you, so that's not a point of.
No, see, but when you were attempting to push Dean Ambrose up to the level of Roman Reigns and Seth
Not,
Rollins, I kept saying I don't know about
yeah,
this.
yeah.
I'm unsure about it, because there's this weird thing about Dean Ambrose that he only seems legit when he's in the ring with either Seth Rollins or Roman Reigns. Outside of that orbit of the former members of the Shield, I don't see that legitimacy from Dean Ambrose, and it's as if he's the anchor that's pulling those other two down, because I look at them and I say they belong in the same tier as people like John Cena and Randy Orton, but it's this weird situation where they're caught in the middle because Dean Ambrose belongs wherever they are, simply because he seems legit when he's in the ring with them. So it's like, where do you go? Do you keep them in A plus and demote him, or do you acknowledge the fact that, yeah, he's kind of booked as an equal player when they're competing against each other?
Well, see, I don't know if he's the only problem. I see he's the biggest problem, but he's
Yeah,
not the only problem.
I'll agree with that.
Seth Rollins too is sort of on and off. He beat Roman clean, which is the thing that really put him over, in my opinion. But but if Roman's not doing so hot right now, I don't really know what's keeping Rollins there because he hasn't. beaten really any of those other guys. I mean, he's beaten Cena with help from Jon Stewart and whatever other times he beat Cena in the dirty fashion. I can't even really remember them. But Rollins has been known to be not very capable in the ring when it comes to getting things done, especially when he loses to a guy like Finn Balor clean with an injury last night. And Finn Balor's not in the A plus tier, so he's kind of
Hmm.
pulling him down. So really it's this whole situation where a number of factors, Ambrose being probably the main factor, but not the only factor, just pulling these three guys back down. And it's not necessarily a knock on them. I'm just starting to feel like my conception of these two tiers was not correct in the first place because I don't really feel like I'm making this up. I feel like I'm discovering the tier list, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Hmm.
So I'm always trying to figure out what is the most accurate description of where these guys belong. And maybe that's a fool's errand because I'm dealing with a show that's not really booked consistently.
What's
But
that term that you used? Internal logic? Was that it? Something like
I'm
that. I
I
remember you
probably
using.
use that term, yeah, but I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Yeah, it's just that when you look at a certain character and the way that they're booked, because the kayfabe tier list is based on, okay, if this person is in this tier, there's a 50-50 shot that they could beat the person in the same tier with them. But WWE does this weird thing where you get situated, for example, with a person like Dean Ambrose. I don't believe that he could beat anyone in the A plus tier legitimately, but he could beat Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. But I believe Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins could beat those people. So it's like this weird inconsistency that comes into play sometimes with how they handle the characters.
Yeah, and that's sort of the problem with trying to
Hmm.
do this is exactly what you just said. But I'm starting to rethink A plus and A. I'm starting to think of A plus as much like Undertaker was the anchor in the S tier or the
Hmm.
staple. I'm starting to feel like A plus is the John Cena tier. And maybe that's weird, but I feel like he is the kind of guy who just beats everyone. Aside from the biggest guy, which was The Undertaker, which he never did face, but I have every reason to believe he would have lost, just given the track record of The Undertaker back
Hmm.
then. And of course, we know what happens when he goes up against Lesnar. So Cena is kind of the quintessential A plus guy. I don't see him dropping down. And Triple H is kind of the same way. I mean, he puts over a lot of people, but he always has this aura of legitimacy around him.
Hmm.
You always know he could win. He's not the Jericho type who's putting over guys every single time. Triple H still wins big matches, so him and Cena are kind of the staples there. Even Randy Orton, I don't know if he belongs in the A plus tier. I kind of just had him there because they were presenting him as a big threat to Lesnar, or at least doing their best to make it seem like he might have a shot. So I put him there for now, but he could drop down back to A, which I had him for the most part every single one of these lists.
You
Now,
know,
yeah,
I know originally you were thinking about creating, what is it, a double S tier, then
yeah, I
an
was.
S tier, and
Yeah.
then following the list on. When you originally proposed that, I was like, no. I was thinking that what's to stop you from going from, double S to 5S tier, 4S tier, and just artificially inflating it in that way. And then I was wondering, like, what do those grades even mean at that point? But I'm starting to understand where you were originally coming from, because clearly Brock Lesnar is in a tier of his own. Well, vacant. Those two are in a tier of their own. But I'm looking at this A plus tier now, and even though AJ Styles beat John Cena, there's still a level of weirdness that comes into play with me seeing him there, because John Cena, Triple H, The Undertaker, and I get what you're saying about Randy Orton too. So, but John Cena, Triple H, and The Undertaker, it seems as if there's a bit of specialness that comes into play with that as well. So, I
Yeah,
could,
I mean, there's part of me that still wants to do that, but I thought, if I do that, I'm gonna have two S's.
yeah,
I'm gonna have A plus, A, and then A minus I have sometimes, so it's just
yeah,
too much. So I just thought, well, I'll just repurpose the A plus tier as the sort of A plus slash S tier.
yeah, that's
And
understandable.
and AJ Styles, he beat John Cena. It could be a case like Kevin Owens where maybe he can't do it ever again, and maybe he starts losing to everyone. So he could easily drop back down. So it's okay to have him there for now, because right now, coming off of that big win, I could certainly see him beating the other guys. I mean, I don't know about the Undertaker because he's always a weird case, but I could see him beating Randy. I could see him beating Triple H, you know? I
Hmm.
mean, his performance was amazing. You know, you saw Cena's face of disbelief.
Yeah.
So the way he was portrayed last night certainly makes me feel like he's on that level. So for now, I think it's okay to have him there, and maybe next time around he'll drop back down. But
I hope not
yeah.
though, because I have plans for AJ. Because there was a point in time where we were talking about how the WWE Championship was dropping. There was a point where Sheamus had it in the friggin' B plus tier. I'm thinking that we need to move AJ, into the orbit of the championship.
Well, I'm pretty sure that will happen. That's where I think things are going. I don't know if he's gonna win. I mean, I'm actually, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's gonna win just because they seem so high on AJ. I mean, actually really surprised how high they are on AJ.
Hmm.
But yeah, the Shield's moving back down to A. I wouldn't call it so much a demotion as just
I could rock with a recalibration. I could rock with that.
because I mean Finn Balor, he's pretty good too. I mean, I don't want to say that A is nothing. So I want it to be that A is the tier where you're a eventer. Like A plus is you're a main eventer and beyond. You know, you're the
Hmm.
you're kind of a staple main eventer. It doesn't matter where you are on the card, you're still a huge deal.
Hmm. Okay, I could definitely get that. Anything more to say on the kayfabe tier list?
Well, yeah, a bunch of other guys were kind of recalibrated too. I mean, I moved a lot of people around here just to make it more accurate. I guess the B tier to lessen out and the B plus tier now is really crowded.
Hmm. Yeah, I
But
actually
but
had to
that's
change the design of the thing just to fit everybody on there.
yeah, I think that a lot of the reason that is because of the tag teams because you have the New Day and then you have
American
um
Alpha.
American Alpha. Yeah, I'm looking at it. I'm trying to think of what else I did. Yeah, so Darren Young kind of his kind of stopped, so I put him back down to C plus. Heath Slater has been making moves. The Dudley boys have been jobbing out, and for now we know that they're pretty much retired. I don't know if that's true.
I don't know what the
I'm
hell's going
kind
on
of
there.
I'm kind of skeptical with that still, but I guess we'll. Del Rio I dropped, even though I still get an era of legitimacy to Del Rio just because he's a legit guy. Like he's a great wrestler, he has a great presence about him, but he's always booked so shittily.
Hmm.
So I mean, maybe I'll move him back to A plus eventually, but he loses a lot, and he doesn't really seem to be going anywhere.